there, welcome to Inkquiring Minds. My name is Doug and I'm back with another Pen Resurrection Sunday video. Today I'm going to do an update on a Sheaffer Snorkel set that I tried to fix a couple of times, but now I think I'm going to be able to fix it. And you can see the video on that by clicking right up here. It's a two-parter, and this is a Sheaffer Snorkel pen and pencil set that was donated to my channel by Janice. Thank you, Janice. And I've been working on this pen for about a year now, and I think I have a solution for it. It is a Sheaffer Snorkel clipper, and it is a gorgeous pen. We'll get to that. That is an update. We'll do a quick fix on that. But this is the subject of today's resurrection. This is a Parker 51 Aerometric pen and pencil set from the 1950s. I haven't got the nib apart yet to find out whether there's a date code on it. But again, I've been waiting a long time. I think I got this pen back in November of 2024. I was waiting all through Christmas and into the spring and everything for this. This is a brass converter that I buy from my friend in India on eBay, and I'll post his auction for these items right here on the screen, and you can get them too. But he's a young man who is an engineer, and he's going to engineering school, and he designed and machines these brass converters to convert Aerometric Parker 51s from being Aerometrics to being cartridge converters. So you can use a Parker cartridge in it, you can use a Parker converter in it, and because Parker is relatively the same as Lamy, you can use Lamy cartridges in here, you can use Lamy converters, and you can use a PenBBS converter as well. So it makes this Parker Aerometric a much more useful and modern pen. I know some people love the Aerometric and think it's sacrilege to remove that Aerometric filler, but I find them a pain in the old patoot to try to clean out or to try to fill. The edges of that bar are sharp, and you have to pump and pump and pump. You spend an afternoon pumping this thing, and you never get the ink all the way out. So by converting it to a cartridge converter pen, you can use this pen with much more convenient cartridges and converters that are much easier to maintain and clean. So we're going to do that resurrection for this pen. One of the things that was an issue when I bought this pen was that the barrel is cracked, and we're going to address that issue as well. There's the crack right there, goes all the way down there. So I'm going to use my Captain Tollies to see whether I can seal that crack. It's not a big deal as long as that crack is stabilized. It should be, the pen will be fine because that won't leak any ink, because this isn't an ink seal right here. So I'm going to attempt to restore and convert this pen and pencil set in this episode. But first we're going to start with the snorkel repair. Let's take this Sheaffer Snorkel clipper out and take a look at it. It has a really nice 14 karat gold nib. I'm going to polish it up a little bit more than that. I've already done some polishing on this pen a few times. I polished the cap up and the clip, and it's looking very nice. But the issue with this pen is this crack right here, which I have sealed with Captain Tollies, and it's still got a blemish on it right now, but I'm going to polish that out with some micro mesh and hopefully make it less visible. It is sealed properly, and let's take this pen apart and I'll show you the other repair that I just did. And we've replaced the sack there. The seal is in good shape. The snorkel is in good shape. I had to reset that snorkel inside there. It was a little bit wonky, and so I repaired that. And let's take this touchdown filler apart. The slot screwdriver, blind cap off. There we go. We can drop that touchdown filler through, and there. I ordered an actual Sheaffer Snorkel touchdown repair kit and got that proper sized O-ring in there, and now the pen actually fills with ink. So I'm getting 0.65 milliliters of ink in this fill, which is pretty good. So I just wanted to get rid of that blemish. Now that stain in that crack is probably not going to go away because it's on the inside of that, but I'm going to try to make the blemish go away. So that looks good, and I'm going to take a look at the blind cap as well and polish it up. There's a little bit of a crack there that I put some tallies on, and we're going to polish that out. And then I'm going to polish up the pencil as well, which works perfectly. I put the blind cap back on so that I don't get any kind of a seam as I'm sanding with my micro mesh from 1500 grit to 12,000 grit. And we'll finish with some polishing compound all over the entire barrel. And there we go. Looking pretty good. Polished smooth, but it's sealed. Put the pen back together again, and I think I'll polish up that nib on my buffer. And there we go. After some buffing and some polishing on my polishing cloth, it looks brand new. Look at that. Gorgeous. So we'll fill this pen up with some ink. So we'll weigh the pen first. 11.5 grams. Press tear. Get out some Watermans. Unscrew the touchdown, which extends the snorkel. And put the snorkel into the ink. Give it a push. You hear that hiss sound. Retract the snorkel. And there we get 0.64 milliliters of ink, which is what I got the last time. So here's a good opportunity to show the component parts of the snorkel, the Sheaffer Snorkel. Of course, there's the cap, the nib assembly, which unscrews from the section, and you can actually take that nib off of there and get at the feed. I've done that with this pen, but I'm not going to do it again because I've sealed it. And then there is an important seal, which is the snorkel point seal, which goes right down inside that section. I'm going to put that on the snorkel point and then thread this through and then put the nib on the section and screw it down. A little bit of silicone oil there on those threads is always a good idea to prevent leaks. There we go. And the snorkel unit, which has the new sack and actually has ink in it, slides into the section on these indents, and it only goes in one direction, but you can change the angle. So you want that snorkel to go in properly, so you have to line it up. There we go. And then the spring goes on the sack protector just like that. Now I'm going to prevent this from spinning around and coming loose inside the barrel, which was an issue with this pen. The spring kept getting loose inside and getting jammed up. So I'm going to glue that down with a little bit of shellac, and that'll make that easy to repair for someone if they want to remove that spring in the future. We'll let that slip right inside that sleeve, and we'll let that dry for a while. Then we can screw down the barrel after putting the touchdown filler in with the replaced seal. This is the important seal. Got to make sure that that hole doesn't have any obstructions, because that little hole there is what releases the pressure. And there's another seal right down there at the bottom of the blind cap, which needs to be replaced now and then as well. So that's a new seal. And we put a little silicone oil on our touchdown sleeve just to let it slide smoothly. Drop that in, drop the screw in, slot screwdriver, slide it through, put the blind cap on, and screw it down. Just snug. And this spring coming loose and binding up inside the snorkel is what caused that crack in the first place, I think, because that's when someone over cranked it because it was binding in there and split the barrel and the blind cap. Now those cracks have been stabilized, and I'm going to wait for that shellac to dry for several hours before I put the barrel back on. So now let's get after this Parker 51 and do the conversion. First off, let's triage this pen to see what it requires for the conversion. The cap finial is in really good shape. No necessary repairs there. There is a bit of a wear mark from the clip, but I'm going to polish up that barrel with some polishing compound on my buffer. And of course it says Parker on the cap, and the barrel is in this lovely teal color. It shows up more blue than teal on the camera. And there are some wear marks from 70 plus years of wear. We'll polish those out. And the hood looks like it's in good shape. Some abrasions, not too many gouges. There's a little bit of a gouge there. So might have to use some 400 grit on that. And there's that nib. And it looks to be a medium. And it looks to be in good shape. I've not tested this pen. I'm showing great patience. This has been in my possession since November. So let's take the barrel off and first look at the crack, if we can see it. It's around here somewhere. There it is. And it extends all the way down to here. So I'm going to apply some Captain Tollies to this and see whether we can seal that up and then polish it out. And there's the Aerometric filler. We're going to remove this and clip off the breather tube that's inside and replace it with the brass converter. So this hood does not want to come off, and so I'm going to use a little heat on it to get it to loosen up, and we'll get that hood off, and then we can get that nib out of there, clean up the collector feed, and get a date code maybe on that nib. Get out my gripper mats and get some heat going here. And there we go. I soaked it a bit and heated it a bit and soaked it a bit, and there is the hood off. Absolutely chock full of old cruddy ink. Let's see if we can get this collector out of here. There we go. Looks like someone favorited green ink in this pen. It's all green. And there's the silver breather tube. Not too much corrosion. It's looking pretty good. It doesn't matter because we're going to be cutting that off to about there anyway. I'm going to have to pull it out of the collector. Now I'm going to put that in the bath a little bit more of some pen flush and get all that cruddy ink out of there so that nib will slide out. And while that's in the bath, one thing we don't want to lose here is this clutch ring that's on the Aerometric filler. It's got to come off, and it's going to need soaking too to get it off of there. And here are the parts out of the pen flush bath, and now that all that ink is dissolved from around the clutch ring and that O-ring, I can get the O-ring off. Just try to get under that O-ring with my tweezers a little bit, and then just take it off like removing a tire. If any of you have done that, there's the O-ring. We need that. And then we can take off the clutch ring, and we need that as well. We can put the Aerometric filler aside. A lot of gunk on the inside of that clutch ring. We'll clean that up, buff it up. And now we can attempt to remove that nib, see if there's an imprint on it. There we go. There's the nib. And what does it say? What does that say? 1950, 1953. There we go, 1953. So, 14 karat gold, Parker, made in Canada, 14K. So we can polish that nib up with my buffer and get it looking brand new. And now let's take a look at the feed, get it out of the collector. There we go. And we'll polish up that ebonite right there, the part that's visible. Yeah, I blew through it. So that breather hole is unobstructed. And we're going to cut this off at a certain point in the converter because we need the breather tube to basically come to about there, just like a millimeter or a millimeter and a half short of that piercing tube, because this is the brass tube on the inside of the converter is what pierces the cartridge when you're using cartridges, and so we want that breather tube to extend to just below it so the cartridge doesn't press against the breather tube when you're piercing it. And from my experiments, that means that we put the nib and feed back together again into the collector. We put the clutch ring and the O-ring on the new converter like that. We put the collector into the converter, and it's very, very tight. Very tight. So I think before I even try test fitting this, I'm going to have to reduce the thickness of that collector. It tends to flare out a little bit, so I'm going to sand that down a little bit so that it'll fit inside the converter. This particular collector is slightly out of round, so I'm going to sand it down. There's a little burr there. We want to make sure that that small ink channel is open when we're done. but I want to make sure I get all the way into that collector first before I try to trim this off. So I've ground down the plastic all the way around with my Dremel tool so that it fits inside that converter. I want to make sure it fits all the way down. I've got a little bit of a gap, so I do need to work on it some more. But I've got a gapping tool here, and I got it set to 0.003 inches. I'm just going to slide it into that gap right there. And this side's longer than the other. It goes all the way through. And this one is shorter. Make sure there's no debris in there, so that channel is nice and clear. I've got to shave down a little bit more up in here so that it goes down inside there flush. There, now I've got it down absolutely flush. Now I'm going to clean up that collector, make sure it's pristine, make sure all those gaps are clear, and then we can go ahead with the conversion. And there's the nib all polished up like brand new, 1953. So it's only 3 years older than me. Wow, it looks better than me, that's for sure. And here's the collector. I've filed it down and sanded it smooth, and now it fits in the converter perfectly. And now we can go ahead and trim off that breather tube. Nib and feed back together. Put that in the collector. Give it a firm push. There we go. Put that in the converter. We get it to go down absolutely flush as it will go. There. Now, I'm just going to take my X-Acto blade here, wherever it is, and I'm going to just score the breather tube where it's flush with the top of the brass converter to make a mark. And then we're going to take the whole kit and caboodle out again, and I'm going to measure 11 millimeters back to embed it into that piercing tube. Sometimes that brass tube gets so tight it's hard to remove it. There we go. See if I can find my mark again. There it is, right there. Just going to mark that with my magic marker right there. And now we measure 11 millimeters, 11, lock that down, and we make another mark right there. And there's the mark where we cut. So I'm going to put that on my Dremel tool and cut it off. Now this is one of the hazards of these old Aerometric breather tubes. They're silver and they corrode. And so this broke off even before I tried to cut it. And so I'm going to have to drill that out of there and then reinsert the good end and then remeasure and recut. So I've got some very, very tiny drill bits that I'm going to try to drill that out with. And we'll make sure it's all nice and clear. And we'll reinsert that breather tube into that feed. Okay, so what I did was I took a very tiny drill bit and drilled out the remains of that silver breather tube, bored it out to make sure that it will accept the other end of the breather tube and that that hole is free. There we go. I'm going to put that in to the feed to make sure it doesn't cover up that breather hole like that. That would be bad. So I'm going to put it to there. I'm going to shellac it in to place and let it dry. And then I'm going to measure back the same distance from the broken end to that little breather hole there. And I'm going to drill a tiny little hole at this end. And then we're going to cut it off to 11 millimeters back from the end of the converter. So this is becoming a little bit more work than I was expecting, but I'm hoping that that will work. So while we're waiting for that feed and breather tube to dry, I'm going to apply a little bit of Captain Tollies to this barrel crack. It's always very runny, so it's difficult to apply because it drips. So I think I might hold it up for this. I'm just going to soak up a little bit of it. There we go. You've heard of heat-seeking missiles? Well, this is a crack-seeking seal, and that's why it's so runny. It's because it seeks the cracks. There. And it says to apply this at 30-minute intervals. So we're going to let that dry for 30 minutes and come back and give it another coat, and we'll see how well that works. Okay, so I've let this feed and breather tube dry, and I've blown through the end so that I know that that breather hole right there is clear. So I'm going to put it back together again, and then we're going to measure it and cut it. So put the feed and the nib together, get some gripper material, and according to my book on pen repair, the large slit on the bottom of the collector goes to the top of the nib. So the small slit goes to the bottom, and we push it in as far as it will go. There we go. That looks good. And we put the whole kit and caboodle together into the brass converter and push it down as far as it'll go. I'm just going to mark it there with my marker. 11 millimeters means it's right there. There. Now I'll take that over to my Dremel tool and cut it off. Second time's the charm. And now I've drilled a small hole in the breather tube because my book says this hole provides a means to equalize the internal and external air pressures and thereby prevent leaks when the pen is clipped vertically in a pocket, and that's about 7 millimeters before it enters the feed. I'm pretty sure that has to do with the Aerometric filler and doesn't have much to do with the breather tube as it is going to be in this conversion. So I don't think it really matters. I'm going to put this whole thing together again, but first I'm going to polish up that ebonite feed. And there's the feed all polished up, beautifully shiny. Let's put this back together again, and we're going to put the bottom to the small slit and push it as far as we can. And that's the way it should look. In fact, it's fascinating to take a look at the tip of that nib. I've got a little digital microscope which shows the tipping material on that. It's very interesting shapes. Must be the way they manufacture those. And then we're going to grab the collector into the converter as far as it will go. There we go. And of course we've got the O-ring there and the clutch ring already there, so that whole unit is ready to go. I put several coats of Captain Tollies on that crack, and then I'm going to, when I polish up this barrel, I'll let that set overnight. But then tomorrow I'm going to polish up this barrel, and hopefully we'll not see that crack at all. I hope you'll forgive the background fan noise, but it's pretty hot here. Hotter than fresh milk, they say. But I've polished up a bunch of stuff. Here's the pencil, all polished up. Micromesh and some polishing compound and the buffer on the cap and the barrel. And this pencil works perfectly now. There was no issues with it in the first place. I've got the nib unit ready to go. And I've polished up the hood, the section, brand new, and the barrel as well. Look at that. And can you even tell as I rotate this where that crack is? I stabilized the crack with some Captain Tollies. There it goes by right there. You have to really highlight it to see it because it disappears. So it's stabilized and polished out, but you can see it. The good thing is that that's not a leak issue because this barrel doesn't hold any ink. It's all contained within the cartridge or the converter now. So we're going to put this pen back together again, and we're going to fill it with some ink. So the first thing we need to do is put the clutch ring back on again first on the converter, and then the O-ring. There we go. And then we're going to put the collector back into the converter as far as it will go. And then we're ready to put the barrel on, and then I'm just going to screw this hood down. It's pushing my nib around. Don't give me problems. Just when you think everything's going right. Now we'll put the hood back down, and hopefully it doesn't turn that nib around. I'm going to put the hood on without the barrel present, and I'm just going to drop a little silicone oil on those threads and on that O-ring. There we go. And so what we do is we point to where the tip of the hood is with my thumb, and we can unscrew it again and give that collector a bit of a twist, and then try it again. The nib is not remaining on the feed, and it's still off by a little bit here, unless that's moved. That's moved it a little bit. So I'm just rotating that collector around. Oh, it's moved it on the feed again. So the inside of the section is dragging that nib around. And it's spinning it around again. Okay, this is going to take some off-camera adjustment. And there we go. Took a little bit of adjustment. I used a slot screwdriver to widen that slot in the nib and get it to stick inside that plastic collector a little bit more firmly, so that the hood could twist around without twisting the nib around the feed at the same time. So now, put the barrel on. Of course, I've had my oily fingers all over it, and there's the pen finished. Let's fill it up with some ink. And I think what I'm going to do is put a PenBBS converter into this and use some Watermans on it. You don't have to use Watermans anymore, because there's nothing in here that ink will attack anymore. It's all plastic. There's no latex inside this pen anymore. There's no sack. So whatever ink you want to use as a cartridge or in a converter is fine with this pen. And here is a PenBBS converter, which is the same size bore as the Lamy and the Parker, and it should fit this pen perfectly, and we should be able to fill this pen up with some ink. Now usually I test these nibs by dipping them at first, but that detailed inspection of that nib showed that it was really in good shape. So let's see whether we can write with this and whether I'm correct in my assumption. So we're going to dip it down into the Watermans and draw up some ink, and that just didn't work. So maybe I'm wrong about this PenBBS fitting that brass bore. Let's try a Parker cartridge. So I'm going to draw up some Watermans, put it in this Parker cartridge, and then we're going to make that fit. Yeah, that feels better. Dip the nib to get some ink flow started through the collector. Get out some Clairefontaine 90 GSM paper, and this is a 1953 Parker 51 Aerometric, and let's check the wetness. It's not too bad. It's very smooth. And I had that idea that it was very smooth, but the microscopic inspection of the bottom of that nib looked really, really smooth. And let's check out what this nib width might be. Get out my pad from Dominant Industries that I got from Tom Odo. It has all the nib widths silk screened on this piece of acrylic, and we just place it over the lines and we see what thickness we've got. Yeah, it's about 0.5, which is a Western fine, and I'd say it's between a fine and a medium. Just feels that way. It doesn't feel fine. I feel fine, and this pen feels just fine. And there we go. That works. Yeah, it's starting to run now, so I feel that ink coming through from that cartridge. Well, this is a beautiful pen now. So let's take a look at the Sheaffer too and see whether it writes. Now I've polished up that pencil and pen, and of course we fixed the snorkel on this, and this is a 1955 Sheaffer Snorkel, and it is called the Clipper, and it's part of the set. Check the wetness. This is nicely wet, and of course I had tuned this nib previously, like last year sometime. I've repolished it. I've just fixed that seal permanently now so that this pen takes up ink. So it's taking up 0.65 milliliters of ink, and of course this is Waterman's Serenity Blue. And let's check this line width. If I can get a straight line out of my hand and see what we have here. Yeah, it's about a 6. So this is a 0.6 millimeter line, which is a Western medium. There we go. Very smooth, very juicy, beautiful pen. So there you go. A 1953 Parker 51 conversion and a 1955 Sheaffer Snorkel clipper that's been resurrected. And I'll come back with my thoughts about these two resurrections right now. So what are my thoughts about these resurrections? Well, I'm really pleased with both of them because I've been waiting a long time to fix both of these. Actually, the Sheaffer set has taken me the longest time because I've worked on it twice. And now I have 3 videos about this fountain pen, and it is finally working properly. The Sheaffer Snorkel clipper is a gorgeous pen. This one from 1955, 14 karat gold nib that just writes beautifully. Now it sucks up and holds ink the way it's supposed to. And it comes in the original box, which if you lift off this insert, you get this original Sheaffer's pamphlet. This is very cool. How to fill your Sheaffer's ballpoint, how to fill your Sheaffer's pencil, how to fill and maintain your Sheaffer Snorkel pen, the Sheaffer's Tip Dip pen. Of course, this guarantee is no longer in effect. All my sales are final. Again, I'm not a professional. I am an amateur. Do this for a lot of fun, and I take great pleasure in selling these pens to people who are interested in keeping them and writing with them. It's nice to have these old pens find a new home. Here's the other side of that pamphlet, 5 easy steps for proper filling, Sheaffer's Snorkel pen, and of course that really cool script bottle. I just happened to have one of these. I was at my antique store a few months ago and found this bottle of original Sheaffer script peacock blue from, I'd say the 1960s, based on the price tag in the store. Here from Baydala drugstores from Edmonton, 69 cents for this bottle of Sheaffer script ink, and it is in great shape. The cool thing about these bottles is that they have a little well built into them right there that you just tip the bottle forward when it's closed and it fills up that little well so you can get all the last bits of ink. There it shows how that works right there in the bottle. Top well makes filling easy. So an original piece of memorabilia right there with the snorkel, and I'm going to sell this pen and pencil set for $95 US. As to the Parker 51, again the original case, beautiful. I've waited for months and months to convert this pen, waiting for that brass insert. This pen was not without its challenges, not least of which was that small crack on the barrel, which has now been stabilized. The pen has been polished up so it looks almost brand new, and this nib writes beautifully. I was a bit surprised that it wouldn't take my PenBBS converter, because I put these converters into Parker 45s before. Works perfectly. So it might be how the brass is milled on the inside of this, the tolerance is there, but certainly you can use a Parker converter or Parker cartridges with this pen. And the nib on this one is just beautiful. It required no work whatsoever. I polished it up, and I was able to use my new digital microscope, which I just got, which takes digital views like that and films and takes images as well. So I'm going to get a lot of use out of this little device that I picked up on Temu. But there's that nib right there. Isn't that gorgeous? So I was pleased to be able to use that. And of course the pencil that comes with it, polished up beautifully and works perfectly. So this pen and pencil set I'm going to sell for $120 US. So if you're interested in either or both of these fountain pen sets, just drop me a line at inkquiringminds@gmail.com with your name and your address so I can get you a shipping quote. Shipping to the contiguous North America is roughly about $10 US these days. And I'll give you instructions on how to pay my PayPal so I can get you your pens as soon as possible. And there you have it. If you like this video, please like and subscribe, and don't forget to ring that bell to get instant notifications whenever a new video is posted. And you can join as a member of my channel for only 99 cents a month. I guarantee I'll answer your comments in the comment section, and you'll get cool emojis, badges, sneak peek unboxing videos, as well as instant access to my videos the moment I post them. And that just leaves it for me to say thank you for watching, And that's all she wrote.
I made this.